Hey guys, it's Abby. Welcome back to my channel. So I'm starting a series on progressed sun through the signs. I'm going to do a video for every sign, but I wanted to do an introduction video to just sort of explain what progressed sun is and why you would want to, know what yours is or look into it at all. I did like a progressed moon series a few years ago and people seem to like that. And I don't think there's a whole lot of information out there on progressions, not nearly as much as natal astrology. So I thought I would put my 2 cents in about the sun. And so to explain what it is, I am talking about Western astrology. Vedic is amazing, and I think it's way more accurate for like real-time stuff because it has to do with, it's a sidereal zodiac that they're using, which is exactly where the constellations are now. Western astrology is more symbolic and psychology based because it has to do with mathematics and it does not follow the constellations in real time. Hence the reason why they're very different in application. And Vedic astrology seems to be just incorporated into Indian culture, like so much so that charts are consulted for like marriage matches. It's just par for the course. Excuse me. But over here in the US especially, like people are really into it now. I love that Gen Z is really into it as well, but it's not considered part of the culture. It's still considered kind of woo. So I know that Vedic uses progressions. I don't know how. I'm not even going to tap into that. But for Western astrology, this is actually one of the methods that you can use that's rather more accurate when it comes to event planning or event timing. Or you can at least expect a shift in your identity, in your career, possibly having to do with your father. And yeah, those are the main ones with the sun. People give a lot of emphasis on the sun in Western astrology. I don't like to do that too much. Ultimately, the sun represents your ego. And your ego's not everything. I know that I live in a country where every other country sees the US as very egotistical. So yeah, we put a lot of emphasis on the one planet that has to do with our ego. But the moon, the ascendant, the rest of the planets, they're just as significant and the ego needs to be put in its place. So I just wanted to give that caveat. So, how do you figure out what your progressed chart is and like what is it? It's basically your natal chart sped up one day for every year you've been alive. So if you look at a chart of the sky 30 days after you were born, that's going to be your progressed chart 30 years after you're born. So at age 30, if you wanted to look at your progressed chart, you would just you could look at something called an ephemeris, which is kind of like a history, it's like a lookup, a reference for where all the planets were at any year that you want. You could look at that, or you could just go to a site that generates charts and look at what the sky looked at like 30 days after you were born. Or you can go to astro.com. They're free. You can create a free account. You can plug your information in and you can choose from the extended chart selection, progressed chart, or you can look at natal and progressed chart and they'll put your progressed planets on the outside of your natal chart, which is convenient because then you can see what houses your progressions are moving through, because that's also important information. Like if you have a progression moving through your 5th house, you kind of want to know that because that has to do with children. Like it depends on what planet it is, but you just kind of want to know. If you have something moving through your 7th house, that's the house of marriage. So that would be useful to know. So you always want to know where your progressed planets are moving through when it comes to your natal houses. Now the houses progress as well because your ascendant progresses very slowly. About the speed of the sun, I think even slower. In some cases, I'm not quite sure how that's calculated, but it is. So your houses progress. So if you look at your progressed chart, your progressed planets will be in their own houses, right? That's a sort of secondary consideration. You can read the progressed chart as it is, but it's really way more important as how it is interacting with your natal chart. So that's always the primary concern. What's it doing in correlation to the natal planets? What aspects is it making? Is the progressed sun coming up on your natal Venus? That's important to know because that could indicate that you're going to have a love interest and get married, or you've got to watch your weight because you're going to be focused on sensual pleasures like sweets, like think Taurus energy. Or you could be focusing more in your career on aesthetics. You could be updating your look. You could be having a glow up. Like, there's plenty of interpretations towards this, and you have to look at everything. But that's why it's important to see what aspects it's making to the natal chart. So when your sun changes signs, it progresses into a new sign. It could be when you're young. It could be, mine first progressed when I was like 7 because I was born towards the end of Aries. But if you're born towards the beginning of a sign, it could take 20 years for you to have your first solar progression, because it takes 30 years for the sun to move from one sign to the next, because it takes 30 days for the sun to move from one sign to a next in real time. So again, it's a day for a year. The concept here is that the micro equals the macro. It's very symbolic. These aren't real charts, and yet they work. And you can even look at transits to your progress chart for more event timing. So when your sun actually progresses to a new sign, you can expect a shift in your identity. Now, this isn't going to be a total shift. If you're like a Scorpio, you're never going to be a Sagittarius. You're a Scorpio. But it's like you're a Scorpio at your core, and then this filtered layer goes on of Sagittarius, and you're going to experience a shift to your identity. The more that you embrace this, the healthier it's going to actually be for you, because it's literally, progressions mean how we are progressing. Like, when you take the natal chart, you start there, but how are we progressing through life? You will expect a person to progress. So the progressions show how you're utilizing that energy. How are you taking your natal potential and using it? So I'm going to go through every sign specifically in each video, but I just wanted to give a brief overview. I'm not going to go specifically into the aspects it could make in this series, but just like I said, note that that's a very important thing, especially for timing. And you have to know what orbs you're using. You would want to use pretty tight orbs for aspects. And I'm going to do through like first house, second house, third house as I go. So I'm going to do progress sun through Aries, but also dedicate a portion of the video to the first house. So if you have your progress sun going through Cancer, but it's also going through your natal first house because you have a Cancer rising, then you just have to consult each of those videos for a full picture of what your sun is doing. And I also want to say that you might never progress. So this is unfortunate, but some people die young. So somebody who dies in their 20s, for example, if they were born towards the beginning of a sign, they might never have seen a solar progression. Whereas somebody who was born at the end of a sign and then lives to be like 100, they could see up to 5 different signs. So the first one would be the one they were born with. If they're born at like 28 or 29 degrees, the very last day or two of their sign, then they go into the new sign. They progress into a new sign when they're just like 1 year old. And then when they're 30, they progress into another. When they're 60, they progress into another. When they're 90, they progress into another. That will be the last one, but that's a lot. So that's a person who just has more experiences with different inner identities. They have a lot of shifts perhaps in their career, because you do see career shifts as this happens, and I'll go into each one as it happens as we get to it. But like for me, when my solar progression went from progress sun in Taurus to progress sun in Gemini, which was when I was in my late 30s, I had a significant shift. I actually stopped working in banking, which I had been in for like 12 years. And prior to that, when it was in Taurus, like very Taurusy to work with money. But then before that, I worked in supermarket retail for many years, which is working with food. And before that, I worked as a barista, again, working with like something you consume. Just, I had a lot of things that had to do with Taurus in hindsight. But now, like once I went into Gemini, I quickly shifted into like information. Like I started doing YouTube and, particularly coaching. So that's like giving and receiving information. It's mostly teaching information, right? But like information, that's sun in Gemini. So I had a very specific experience with that, and I'll go into it more in those videos, but I just wanted to put it out there for you that you can see a significant shift right off the bat sometimes not right away. You sometimes need a transit, like a strong transit, to kick it into motion, so to speak, or, you know, some other aspect happening to actually like see results in real time. So it can take a little bit to get the ball rolling, so to speak, for some people, but others who have it, you know, if it happens around your Saturn return, for example, boom, it's going to be a huge change for you. So that's my introduction to the series. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I will see you in the first video. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're new, so you get notifications for the videos as they come out. And don't forget to give me a like if you like this. Thanks, I'll see you soon. Bye.